Hey, Charles, thanks for coming on the show today.
Thanks for having me. I'm very excited to be here
I'm
on the
excited to
power
have
of the
you.
Permian. I
Yeah,
love that name.
thank you.
Love the name.
Yeah, when I started the show, I knew I wanted to do something that kind of had that encompassing, like motivational, just that vibe. It's like
Right.
supporting the industry, and a lot of people really like the name, so it's been solid.
Love it. Love
Thank
it.
you. Well, and I love the name of Showtime Auctioneers. That's very unique.
I like it myself, came up with it. I wanted a name that would be, could have a national presence,
Oh, I
to it,
like
not
that.
not so regional. So a lot of people use their own names, which is
It's
fine, but
true.
I'm not exactly famous yet,
Mm-hmm.
okay? But once, maybe it'd be a little different if I was. But I like Showtime Auctioneers. I think it's very catchy. People remember it. It's
Mm-hmm.
a good name.
Yeah, no, it really is. It does stand out. And, with my experience in the auction, that's something that I've always thought. And it's also an element that's been missing. It's like there's not enough excitement around the auction. And the auction's it's a really exciting thing to participate in, to watch, and just it's a very unique industry.
That's the goal. At Showtime Auctioneers, especially, we're trying to bring an entertainment value. So many people, because, like you said, auctions are exciting, but unfortunately, I've been to some that weren't so exciting.
That's very
Okay, and they're
true.
a little mundane.
Yeah.
And something that I've really noticed here recently is a lot of auctioneers, in my opinion, they're good auctioneers. They can't really sell. And I was fortunate enough to start out with the Cruise bunch way back in the day selling classic cars. And so much of that is entertainment, and they stop the sale and give a big speech, and that's the kind of stuff that we want to bring to the market and make it a fun and enjoyable thing. I've had a lot of people tell me, we watch your auctions, and maybe I want to buy something, and before I know it, it's the last lot, and I've sat here for 4 hours watching this auction,
Oh,
and
that's cool.
and so maybe he's happy with that, maybe he's not, but I think it's good and shows where we're trying to take the brand, make it exciting for the buyers, and not just such a monotonous thing, lot
Yeah.
after lot. Let's bring some excitement to it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. And I mean, similarly, like how I felt about my podcast, because I know there's lots of oil and gas podcasts,
Sure.
but, for me, it's like stories and innovation and seeing like what the industry has to offer, like what's happened in it, where are we moving, all of those things. Some of the context can get a little bit dry, but
Sure.
I do strive to have the nice set and, different things that make it more engaging and fun and memorable to where you're not just watching the podcast, you're not just listening to it, but it's like you're really a part of it. Like the people that are relatable that come on, you've had similar jobs, similar journeys, or that you're able to learn from them. So I understand what you're saying as far as not just presenting the information, but really making it more of an experience.
Sure, sure. Well, and listen, think about it. I want more people to be at our sales buying. So the more enjoyable I make it, the more entertaining, the more likely they're sitting there. Maybe they're starting to buy or bid on something that they didn't even think they were going to have interest in.
That's true.
Right, but they're hung on to the entertainment value of it all, and the Facebook shorts we do, and that's something too, keeping them engaged, not just at the auctions, but throughout the process in between auctions.
Mm-hmm.
Show them what we really do,
Yeah.
and everybody, whether we like it or not, everybody lives on their cell phones now.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're not on the cell phone, I'm still getting these mailers from auction companies, and I mean, I don't send out mailers. Maybe that's a great thing to do, but the mailers I receive go in the trash.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people's mailers, they probably do the same thing with them.
Sure.
So, yeah, it's just a changing industry. I think we're probably one of the last ones, other than classic cars or some of the big auction houses that are doing, 10-carat diamond for $25 million. They bring entertainment. It's exciting. They
Mm-hmm.
put out some really nice promotional things. But in the oil and gas space, it's a little dry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and again, like even with my content, like you have to really, get inside the experience to make it entertaining, because otherwise it is just presenting the machines and the Mack trucks and the different
Totally.
items that you see, and especially if it's a monthly auction, it can be a mundane process. Like you just kind of get in that cycle of buy, sell, rinse, repeat.
Totally. Totally. I couldn't agree more. And it just gets boring, frankly.
Yeah.
You've got to have some excitement to it, and you want to engage with your buyers and sellers all the time, not
Mm-hmm.
just on auction day.
Right.
We want them to have that connection with us all the time. So I think that's great.
Yeah. Well, and because you just never know. People have equipment, they want to sell it, and everything's always changing. And the experience that I've had working with auctions, there's always so much to learn, so much to know. And so when you're engaging with your customers and potential buyers, there's a lot of knowledge that you can share that
Sure.
also, they don't just make you credible, but it just building those relationships where people want
Totally.
to be a part of not just the auction, but they want to be a part of your brand. They want to be a part of what Showtime is doing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I agree. I was fortunate enough, when I started, I really didn't realize it at the time, but the guys that I got hired by, which was the old Cruise bunch that we used to do classic cars all over the United States. I mean, these guys were showmen. I mean, they were so much more than just auctioneers. They brought life to the place. I mean, it
Okay.
was really exciting, and they were just so good at connecting with the people, the buyers,
Mm-hmm.
And let's be honest, if somebody's enjoying themselves, they're going to spend more money. I mean, it's more fun, right? It's not
Right.
like, oh, geez, I got to go to that auction, or I got to watch my phone for 5 hours and I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
bore myself to death.
Yeah.
And I buy equipment all the time, so I experience this,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes a lot of them I just put on mute. I mean,
You're just watching it.
it's just a little boring, and
Right.
Dean Cruz was one of the first guys I ever started with. Kind of a funny story about Dean. I got hired to work. It was the Howard brand, and this guy that had a ton of classic cars, beautiful cars, and he never touched them. They had like no miles, and we sold maybe, I don't know, 2 3 days for him. And I let me back up a little bit. I went to auction school, and Dean owned the auction school, so that's where I got started. And one of the guys that worked for him said, "Hey, if you ever work the ring, we need some ringmen." And of course I hadn't, but I've been to a lot of auctions, so I said, "Absolutely, I work sales all the time. Like I'm trying to get make some money here." So yeah, I definitely can do it. Yeah. So I went to the Howard Brandon sale, and I flew down with Dean on a jet. I'd never even been on a plane in my life,
Oh,
right?
wow.
Yeah, no, I just go to
Gosh,
the
what an experience.
Fort Wayne airport, and they're like, "Well, there's the plane," and I'm like, how does this, like, what do you do? Like, is there security? Do I just
Right.
go through the door
You're
and go to the
just
plane?
right
So,
there.
I'm like 17, 18 years old. I just go out there, stand by the plane because I don't know what to do. And here comes Dean with all these bags. He's got a suit on, and he comes up, shakes my hand, and he's like, "What's the flight time?" And I'm like, I mean, this is my first, trip on a plane. I let alone know the flight time, right?
Right.
And it started there. I told him, I got no clue, Dean. I'm the ringman, and he's like, "Well, then get on the plane. I thought you were the pilot." And I'm like,
Oh.
"Oh, sorry, yeah, sorry about that, Dean." So I hop on the plane, and the rest was kind of history from there. But we went down there, did a great sale. I worked for him every weekend. From then on, working the ring, didn't auctioneer much, and then got into the oil and gas side because I needed to make some more money. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, kind of the way it worked, we had a day rate on those classic car sales. You would go to these lavish, Del Mar, California, Scottsdale, Arizona, beautiful places. But if you're a ringman making a day rate and you want to have any, you know, exciting of a time out there and do some fun things and have some cocktails, you're broke by the time you get on the plane to go
Sure.
home. Okay.
Yeah.
So, I was picking up odds and end jobs during the week, then flat every weekend. And I talked to Jim Ritchie, who now owns an auction company in the space and does really well, a great friend of mine. And I asked him, I said, can I work the sale for the oil and gas sales? And he's like, "Well, they're smaller sales. We don't really have as many people that come to these sales. So we just don't need a lot of ringmen. But if you want to work on the yard, and then I'll make you a salesman after that, you can move to Odessa next week." And I literally put everything I had in a U-Haul and went to West Texas
Wow.
and lived in Odessa. And I mean, it was culture shock.
Oh,
I
it
mean,
had to have been.
I didn't know a pump jack from a well service rig.
Yeah.
Okay. And they were very quick to let me know that as well.
I
and
bet.
and so it was really an incredible thing. I worked down there in West Texas for maybe 2 or 3 years, and then took over the Rocky Mountain territory when I did sales for them,
Oh,
and
nice.
stayed with those guys 10 years. But I was very fortunate to get started with some people that were really professionals in the space. You
Mm-hmm.
know, Dean at the time when we started, he was as big as Barrett Jackson. I mean, it was incredible. We were doing just classic car sales all over the place, and he was a bigger than life personality. I mean, he really was, and it was just a good time. So that's kind of how I got into the oil and gas, and then at some point, maybe 10 years into my stint there with Cruise, they ended up selling to Ritchie Brothers. And yeah, it just wasn't for me. I mean, they're a
Yeah.
decent company, but they're ran totally different than we were, you
Mm-hmm.
know. And it's kind of funny, you know, now having Showtime Auctioneers and taking some of the good things, you know, from Cruise and changing some other things. But you know, they were like the landman of auction companies. Basically, they were wildcatters. You know, I mean, when
Okay.
I became in sales, they told me, okay, well, if you have a sale in 60 days, that'll be great, and if you don't, you'll be looking for something else to do. And
Dang.
you might not even hear from them from like a month. You know, you're just out there consigning equipment. As long as
Yeah.
you're having sales,
Mm-hmm.
that's it. Well, then when I got on with Richie, you know, it's just a lot different. I mean, everything you do's tracked, every meal. You know, you
Very
feel like
corporate. Yeah.
exactly, totally, totally.
Mm-hmm.
But for somebody that started out just the opposite, that was a big shock. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, I can see it would be a totally different animal to get into oil and gas, heavy equipment, because oil and gas is a world of its own, but the Permian Basin is a different world. Like when you
totally.
just like getting out there, it's hard to believe that there's that community out there, Midland, Odessa. And to learn it, if you can navigate it, you can be very successful, but it can be hard on people, especially when you don't know something and you're quick to learn it. It's not always you're not necessarily treated with kid gloves out there. Like you get
No,
some thick skin pretty quick.
not at all. I've had a lot of my employees, they all are addicted to Landman now. And they're like, we envision that's you. And I'm like, you know, it kind of was. I can remember my first day on the job out there, and they tell me, you know, hey, you know, we need you to move this wheel loader up front, put it in line, you know, and it had just rained and they had just painted this wheel loader. And so I hop in it and I'm like, I don't, you know, been a farm kid, so I can drive a tractor or a skid steer, but you know, this is a little different. And the salesman hopped up in there and he shoved it in drive, and he's like, that's the brake, that's the gas, and if you want it out of gear, pull it in the middle, you know, and that's neutral. All right, take it up there. And I mean, this is the biggest piece of machinery I've ever driven.
Oh,
And
nerve
no
wracking.
training. There's no training. The
None.
training was get your ass in the seat. You
Yeah.
know, that was the training.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
you figure it out. So I drove to the front of the yard. I park it. They come up there screaming at me. We just spent thousands of dollars painting that, and you drove it through every damn mud hole in the whole
Oh,
yard. And I'm like,
yeah.
well,
You were
okay, we'll
just
do that
focusing
again, you know?
on driving it correctly. You weren't.
Right, but to what you're saying, I mean, it's very, you know, it's different. It's
Mm-hmm.
just kind of jump in and get it
Yeah.
and figure it out.
Yeah, and that can be overwhelming because you feel like it's you, like, it's like they're just not training you. It's like this is just the way it is out there. And when you learn and you grow through that, like you learn to be more self-sufficient and you gain your confidence that way. But in the beginning, if you can't withstand that, if you can't deal with that kind of training, so to speak,
Yeah, or
like you're
yeah,
just, I mean, there's a lot of people that, that they'll go home or they'll quit, but sometimes
totally.
when you don't have a choice or you've come so far, there's no turning back.
Listen, the best thing that happened to me was moving out there, and then I had no money to get back. Okay, so no, I mean that's the
There was
truth.
no
That's the
choice.
truth. I mean,
Right.
there was nowhere to go.
You
So
were
it was
there.
like you're gonna figure it out, you
Mm-hmm.
know. And yeah, it was looking back, it was a very odd way to learn,
Oh,
in my
yeah.
opinion. You know,
Sure.
when I started hiring people, I realized the value of training
Yeah.
and those things. And there's a lot of good that can come out of that
Mm-hmm.
because I would definitely say it takes. You know, a right type of person to be able, like you kind of spoke to handle that kind of,
Yeah.
let's be honest, stress. You
It's
know,
extremely stressful.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and it's not a lot different, in my opinion, in different basins. You know,
Right.
I even think it's a little harder up in. I did a lot of work in North Dakota.
Oh, for sure.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
Like the storms up there. I mean, it's an accomplishment just to stay alive some days. I mean,
Yes.
you know,
Well,
really.
and because it's like you could really die from some of those
Yeah,
freezing temperatures.
frostbite.
Yeah.
Definitely got to watch that.
You have to be able to dress correctly, appropriately, and work in it. Like I never worked in North Dakota. That's one, there's a lot that I've done. There's a lot that I've been able to do. I just never had the opportunity. I don't
Hmm.
even know if I would have taken it or not. But it's people that can work in North Dakota, especially if they've worked in West Texas. That's a totally different level to be able to work in
Absolutely.
the freezing cold. It gets
Absolutely.
cold in West Texas, but not like that.
And without a doubt, we had a small pump rental company up there maybe 5 years ago or so, and it's just very hard to hire. But the people to hire up there are the people that are from up there.
For sure.
Okay, they understand it.
Yeah.
They're prepared for it. I had a well service client we were selling out one time up there, and we were laughing because they needed hands, so they were flying them in from all over, Texas, California, all over. And I mean, these guys would show up with like kind of a light parka. This is like, Antarctica weather. This isn't
Right.
parka. Like you need, some serious clothing up there. It's just totally different animal up there for sure. But as far as like the feel of the Permian and kind of jumping in there and get it, I don't know if that's much different up in the Bakken. There, it's kind of the same
Sure.
way.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, going into the oil and gas auction, did you feel a natural pull? Like, did you know that you eventually wanted to start your own company?
Yeah, always. In fact, like I don't know. It's the first week I was there. I sat in front of the president of the company. He said, "Where you see yourself in 5 years?" And I said, "In that chair right there."
Oh, nice.
And
That's
he's like, "I
bold.
like that. I
Yeah.
like that." And I'll never forget because I had to look the word up back then. But there are three owners back in the day with Cruise Energy, and the one called the other to make sure it'd be okay to send me down to Odessa because, of course, I accepted it. I didn't have a lot of opportunity, and I'm like, done. I'm in.
Sure.
So he said, when you came down here, Jimmy told me that you had a lot of gumption like we did back when
Okay.
we were younger, and of course I really didn't know what that. I had to look that one up, but I just had a knack for it, I guess. I love auctioneering, and the more entertaining you can be, I thought that was just normal. I mean, because the guys I was traveling with, watching every single weekend, it's just what they did.
Mm-hmm.
They were showmen. I mean,
Yeah.
and you would see them. A bidder would stop bidding, and they just go on these rants. If you don't buy it today, you're going to be kicking yourself tomorrow, and you're going to call the guy that bought it, and he's going to want $50,000, $60,000 more. But if you buy it today, here today is the day you make the deal, and then they bid. And I
Oh,
was like,
yeah.
that's really cool.
Yeah.
That's
That was
cool.
very
I
motivating.
like that. I just there's a lot of power, I guess,
A
too.
lot of
Like
power. Yeah.
getting those people to
Power of
bid.
persuasion.
Exactly,
Mm-hmm.
exactly, and they're
Yeah.
good at it.
Yeah. Well, and that seems like that would be a necessary element in to be successful and to be able to get the most money because with the auction, it's not black and white. There's this gray area of influence where, it's like especially if someone needs it, if they have the money, if they're not sure, and you can actually, use your own personality to make that sale and you're making it live and people are watching and so there's like you said, a level of showmanship and being able to sell under those circumstances. It's like you really have to embody the auctioneer. Like, what does
Totally.
that mean? And the more engaging and entertaining you can be, the more you're going to be able to captivate.
Yeah, and it's changed a lot. There's a lot of good auction houses out there that just do timed auctions, and I don't think that's an issue, other than when you have really big ticket items. I think it can really change the value of an item. Well service rigs, drilling rigs, really big. If you're selling, 150,000 grapples or something, probably a timed auction's okay.
Sure.
There's not much I can say about the 40,000th grapple I've sold compared to the one, on down the line.
Right.
There's not
True.
a big difference. But when you have well service rigs and you really know the market, and I think the best auction companies, they know the market. I get a kick out of these. People consign their equipment and have a live auctioneer sell it who has no clue what they're selling.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, would you sell your
Occupational hazard.
house with the taekwondo instructor down the street? Well, if he's a good realtor, maybe.
Yeah.
But there's nothing about a high kick that's going to make your house worth any more.
Sure.
Okay, so it surprises me because so many of these larger auction firms, they're just flying auctioneers in, and maybe that's just what you have to do. But
Mm-hmm.
we like to be understand what we're selling, and it absolutely helps 100%.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and understand what the value of the item is, retail, things of that nature. I mean, listen, right now we're spending about 500,000 a month buying at other auction companies, our competitors. Why? Because they don't know what they're selling.
Mm.
You know, now a lot of the owners do, right? But the guy on the microphone, when it's selling, has no clue what he's selling.
Okay, so
And
they might not be getting as much as they could.
totally. Totally. Or you'll see a lot, they'll sell, I just bought 7 power swivels out of North Dakota that we're shipping down here. And, they start to bid at $2,000, $3,000 because whatever they were selling previously, that's about where they were at. And instead of understanding, hey, these are power swivels, they should be worth 20, 25, 30 grand starting bid, then bring 40, 50,000. They start them at 2 or 3. And it's just, it makes a big difference.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, is it just over the years that you've been keeping up with the market? Like you know what the equipment is used for, and because you have to not only know what the equipment's used for, but then, like you said, being current with the market, what's their value? That seems like that would be a lot of information to
Well,
keep up with.
so, back to when I started, I was 17, 18 years old, and all I did was go around to all these yards and write this stuff up. So, right there, I knew what it was,
Oh,
the
nice.
general application. I mean, I've never worked on a rig. Okay, I've been on drilling rigs, I've been on well service rigs, but I've never worked on a rig. But it's kind of funny, so many of those people that work on the rigs, well, that's a pair of, uh, tube and tongues. Okay, well, what make is it? Well, I don't know. That's the tube and tongues.
Mm,
So it's kind of unique. Like I hold some information that they don't, know that they're
okay.
Foster
Yeah,
5893Rs,
sure.
you know,
Right.
and
Yeah.
they're looking at me like, well, how don't you know what that does?
Yeah.
Well, so it's kind of a trade off there. But really, since I was 17 or 18 years old, this is all I've done.
Mm.
Primarily oil and gas equipment. We do appraisals. We have a great knowledge of the value of the equipment because we're selling so much of it. I mean, even before I had Showtime Auctioneers, I had Wampler Capital. We're doing M&As. We're doing a lot of private sales.
Mm-hmm.
So you get a great idea and we buy all the equipment through Wampler Capital. So I know what it brings at the auction, what I can buy it for, what I can sell it for privately. So I've got a really good understanding of what the overall evaluation of these assets are.
Yeah, that's huge because, like I said, like I've worked with a couple different auction companies, and you can see where the knowledge and the experience is when
Totally.
if you know the pickup truck market and you can be very savvy and down to the dollar amount what it's worth and what it can bring, but if you try and step into oil field equipment but you don't even know what this equipment's used for, like you said, it's like you can't, it's not the same. It's
Totally.
it's a totally different world, and so it's not going to translate the same.
Right.
And so it's like you have to stay current on the market and knowing what the equipment's used for. You don't necessarily have to know how to use it yourself or have the
If
experience
you're in our line of business, you don't.
in the
That's right.
application process. And again, with being floor hand, you don't necessarily need to know the serial numbers or
Right.
where to find the VIN,
Right.
things like that. But it's to be knowledgeable and for people to not just trust you and build the relationship, but to see you as the expert in your field and know that like you're the guy that's going to get them the most money.
Totally. And we are. I mean, we're buying at all of our competitors' auctions from the biggest to the smallest, And I really thought maybe it's just oil field equipment that's our background, but we just bought a lot of stuff from Ritchie Brothers, yellow iron, and we took it right to our auction. It's 5 miles from where we bought it from in 2 weeks, and we averaged 32% increase on sales. So there is something to it. I really think we're the best at it, and we have a knowledge. We care about what we're doing. And another thing that we've really latched on to, and I don't know why a lot of the other companies aren't doing this, but just getting out there. There's some, we post as much as the largest auction company in the world. And I've got 2 people handling marketing, and they probably got 2,000. I don't know, or
Sure.
200. But I don't think they're taking advantage of that. And that's kind of, you got to remember when I started in the auction business, we had no online bidding. Okay,
Oh,
so there's no
interesting.
online bidding, no
Okay.
buyer's premium. So a lot's changed here in the last, gosh, 15, 20 years, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And now we have great sales, and there's 2 people in the room.
Mm-hmm.
Which is an odd feeling. For when I did my first auction, it was a total nightmare. Okay, I mean a total nightmare. I so we were going to do a sale in Williston, and the reason I wanted to have a sale up there was because that was where most of my clients were at the time. So I was just moved to Texas, and we sold out a company and had a lot of well service rigs and things up in Williston, North Dakota. So talked to my wife. We should take the kids. It's the first sale ever. It's a great idea.
Sure.
Okay, let's take the kids. So I wake up. We had a flight. Let's see, how was that? We were flying, and if you ever flown to Williston,
No.
you don't just get in at Dallas and get out at Williston,
Okay.
right? You're to Denver or
Oh,
wherever
yeah.
it may
Okay.
be,
Not
and
direct,
so
and then you got to travel.
you're hoping the connections line up. So I wake up at like 3 a.m. We had an early flight because we were gonna get up to Williston at maybe like 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, set up the auction, put all our promotional pamphlets out and things. And I get an alert. And I'm not making this up, okay? It sounds so far fetched, I know. But it says, your flight's been delayed 10 hours and 40 minutes or something.
Ooh.
And I'm like, okay, so this is a problem, right? So, no backup auctioneer. Okay, so there's nobody that can just show
It's
up to
you
help
or
me.
not.
Yeah, it's right. So I start getting on my phone and I'm calling and we're doing everything we can to get up there. We finally fly into Billings, flew into Billings. So we went Dallas to Denver, and those with kids,
And with your kids, yeah.
with kids. My kids are young, they're not plug and play or anything, where they just put the headphones in and you see them in 5 hours. No,
Right.
no. And so we went to Denver, then to Billings. Then we got in a van in Billings and drove overnight to
Oh,
Williston.
gosh.
Yeah, we had our setup meeting at midnight. Okay, so we're at the hotel at midnight. We wake up. It's, gosh, I don't know. I probably got down around 7 or something, and we've got 5 people at the sale.
Mm.
And I'll never forget when I did my opening remarks. It felt like I was standing in the shower.
Mm.
I'm sweating so bad. I'm like, there's 5 people here. We've made a big mistake here. Okay, this is
Right.
gonna be a tragedy.
And then you still have to go through with it.
Well, yeah, there's no like, hey, we had a really bad turnout today, and
We'll
we're
see you
not
guys
real
next
good at
time.
this, so we're gonna try the first auction next month.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's you're all in.
Gosh, yeah, that's a
So
lot.
we had the sale. It was a phenomenal sale. But I can tell you, speaking back to the changes in the industry, when you get up there as an auctioneer and you've went to these auctions, like that first auction I told you where Dean thought I was the pilot, we probably had, I don't know, 500 people at the auction. It was incredible. I mean, just
Yeah.
people raising their hand everywhere to bid,
Yeah.
And to now be standing up there at my first auction on my own ever, and I've got 5 people looking at me. And
Oh,
granted,
yeah.
you've got all the online bidders.
It's not
but,
the same.
Well, now I'll show up at my auction. We got one coming up June 25th, by the way. A little plug there.
Yeah.
And now I know people are going to show. I've done this long enough. We're on like our 32nd, 33rd sale or something like that. We have great attendance. We have a lot of good people that come every sale. So now it's there's no anxiety.
Yeah.
But that first sale, standing up there.
And all that travel.
Yeah, and your
like-
kids looking at you like, oh yeah, come on, Dad.
And
like
this is what we came here
This is
for.
our gig.
Yeah.
It's like,
This
ooh,
is
I
your
mean,
time to shine.
You talk about some stress. I was stressed, but then it's kind of neat because the bids start coming in, and then you get more calm.
Yeah,
you
because
know?
then it's an engaging. It's not just
Totally.
you making a speech.
Totally.
And then you get that validation with the feedback that people want what you're selling.
Absolutely.
But that initial, after like the stress of travel like that and the overnight and the van and all of these things, just trying to get there, I wondered about that because 500 people, everybody's raising their hands, all the excitement. That would be difficult for an auctioneer that is used to that kind of live interaction to adapt to the online. Even though there's a lot of potential because this can potentially be, obviously global, but
Right.
to not have that physical presence of all the people, would that be a difficult transition?
Absolutely. It's terrifying. I mean, but it works. And if I had to pick, I would take where we're at today. Because there's so many people that, back in the day couldn't make the sale or they had something happen. And now anyone, and not even to mention the global bidding, right? I mean, very few people. We would get some international bidding back in the cruise days, but not a ton, because you had to be at the sale, and you can't call in bid if we don't know you. Hey, I'm in Argentina and I want to bid on a
Right.
$500,000 rig right now. Okay,
Sure.
good luck.
Yeah.
So I do like where we're at now, but it was probably more exciting back, and that's kind of what we're trying to, bridge the
Oh,
gap,
yeah,
you
I
know,
can see that. Bring it, no, it's kind of coming full circle for me because it was exciting in the beginning.
very much
But
so.
it's trying to bring it into where we are with the digital age. It's like now make it exciting in a new way.
Exactly.
Mm.
And to me, that is the ticket to success. How do you bring back the excitement? Because you would have people like look it over, and if they saw, Billy over there bidding, there's no way in
Oh,
hell he
yeah.
was letting him buy more power
There would
swivels if
be
I'm
that
in the power swivel riddle business. Oh, for sure.
competition.
And then it goes both ways, right? We'd always call it brother-lawing, but that's where, oh, well, I like Breezy. Okay, you're bidding on that one. All right, I'll let you have that one, and they would do
Oh,
that. So it
gotcha.
worked both
Yeah.
ways.
Yeah.
And that was always real irritating because we'd have guys just stand up and go over to their buddy, and they'd basically just write down, okay, you want these? Okay, I'll stay
Oh,
off
that would
those and
be.
I'll take
Yeah.
these. Okay. So it goes both ways, but it was very exciting.
Mhm.
Very exciting.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And so but it's exciting now. It's just now there's a lot of creative potential to make it your own where it's not like you said a lot of people it's just they're presenting the information. They're not necessarily in that dynamic with, the Showtime and, this is live and it's exciting
30
and
foot LED wall, I might add,
yeah, yeah, no, that is really cool. Like it's definitely setting you apart and in enhancing the experience.
Totally. Yeah, and that's a crazy story in itself. I was just, I'm always looking for equipment, anything. And I had this idea, we need a big video wall behind us so that the people can not only see the auctioneer, but can see the equipment they're bidding on at the same time, and it's done in a really nice format.
Ooh, yeah.
So I got on there and I found one. I'm like, sweet. And it's at an auction. So I'm like, this is great,
Oh, that's
right?
meant to be.
Yeah, and it was, I don't want to say the auction company from hell, but it was close, okay? Because I bought it, and that's the set we have used to be Russia America TV or something like that. I don't know. They went out of business, and so they sold their whole set. So we buy it, and then I get the checkout terms, and it's like you can pick up next Wednesday from 2 to 3, next Friday from 1 to 2. I mean, it was, there just wasn't a lot of time to pick it up. And they had to be out at a certain time.
Mm.
So we had to hire somebody, much like probably the people that own this podcast said, to go and break it all down for us, put it in boxes.
Oh, right.
Then the shipping company didn't want to ship it.
Mm.
They're like, well, we don't want to be liable for this. I mean, if any of these pixels, get messed up,
That's
like,
true.
so we had to get all that handled, and finally we got it here.
Oh, that was a big deal.
It was. It was out of Washington, D.C.
And it had to come from far away.
It was a mess. Okay, great
That is
idea.
a mess.
Well, and then we had these guys come to repair it because it had a few things that we had to work on. And he's like, you can buy these brand new for like half what I paid. And I'm like
Oh,
ill
that
over
sucks.
this thing,
Yeah.
And I'm like, we're gonna make this work,
Yeah.
But it's great now.
Yeah, you're all
it's
in
it's great. It's
at
great.
that point. Wow. Yeah, definitely a story there too. Just trying to get everything set up, but worth it.
Totally.
Yeah.
Stick around. There's a lot of stories around Showtime.
Yeah. No,
Just
I believe
yesterday,
that.
I had my accountant. I needed help because we got a couple girls on vacation in the office. We bought a pipe handler. Okay. Well, the truck broke down on the side of the road, so me and the accountant are out here with a little tripper pipe handler on the side of the road. He looks at me, he's like, "Man, this is why I love this job." And he's an older fella. He's had a lot of good jobs, and he said, "You just never know what you're gonna get into over
Right.
here."
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
it's exciting.
No, it really is, and I mean that's a a part of the oil field that it's definitely mysterious, but it's also because like you just never know what's going to show up or what you're going to be able to find, but also that people can be involved. It's something that you can participate in. It's bringing people together from all walks of life, and
Totally.
definitely experiences for you guys. Just putting it all together every month, and you never know what you're going to come across.
Yeah, it is very exciting, and I'm always promoting the oil and gas industry. I think it would be one that's great to work in, whether you want to do auctions. That's a little more niche than
For
some
sure.
others,
Yeah.
But I talk to people every single day that are looking to hire, right? And so much of it truly is if you've got good effort, good attitude, and you'll work hard.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's a really great job out there for you.
Mm-hmm.
Now, You may not be able to have all the things you want. Or,
Right.
I saw one of your other podcasts when you were talking about, when they call, you got to go.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's not
Yeah.
like, well, let me talk to HR. I don't want to work this Saturday. Well, that may not be
Mm-hmm.
conducive to the oil and gas industry, okay? But if you're
Exactly.
willing to work hard and you've got a good, mindset about it, which I did even starting out back then, and it was very intimidating because I knew nothing,
Oh yeah.
nothing. Go get that, power swivel or whatever. I mean, I didn't even know what I was looking at. What the
Sure.
hell's a power swivel?
Yeah.
And not all this stuff just says power swivel on
Yeah.
the side of it. Like you're
Yeah.
just like, oh
It's
yeah,
not
that one.
all
Okay,
labeled.
so easy.
No. Yeah.
So it was a different animal, but it's just been so awesome for me in my life. I mean, it was really great. I love the people. Growing up, and I don't know if a lot of people feel this way or not, but I grew up pretty poor, and I always thought, rich people got suits. This Wall Street.
Yeah.
That's who's got the money.
Right.
There's people out here. One of my best friends out here in the oil and gas business. I mean, he speaks mostly Spanish, just a little bit of English, and he's made more money than anyone I nearly know.
Mm-hmm.
But you never know it.
Sure.
You never know it. So, yeah, you just meet all kinds of kinds. I'll tell you a good story about that. We were at a car sale, and this is when, I started really learning, because I grew up in a small Indiana town, didn't really get out much,
Sure.
didn't travel much, weren't a lot
Mm-hmm.
of vacations, so I wasn't well rounded like maybe I am now. And we were at a car sale. We're selling this, like, I don't remember. Let's say it was $500,000 Duesenberg or something. I mean, it was an extraordinary amount of money. And I'm working the ring, and this guy, he's got a jumpsuit on, and those black Velcro shoes. You know the ones I'm
Oh
talking
yeah.
about. Yeah, who doesn't, right? And so, anyways, he's sitting there and he's filming and he's bidding, and I didn't take his bid.
Mm.
I'm like, maybe he's just waving at his wife or, wanting a water or something. I don't know. This guy, I mean, he's not going to buy this car, right? So the auctioneer was actually Dean Cruz, and he took the bid, and after that, he calls me to the back. He's like, don't you ever do that again, and I never forgot that. That was a big eye opener for me, because he's like, that guy owns half of Pasadena, California, and he can buy anything in this place,
Oh,
and
yep.
it just was a
You
real eye opener.
prejudged.
And the oil field's a lot like that too.
I could see that.
There's a lot of guys out there that aren't what and to my defense, I was 17 years old.
Of course.
Okay, this
Yeah.
isn't yesterday,
You
but
you were making a judgment call that seemed reasonable
at the time,
at the
yeah,
time.
it did. But I learned very quickly, and the oil and gas business is a lot like that. I mean, they're just normal guys. So many of them.
Well, and not the flashiness can be deceiving. Now, flashiness can equate wealth and making good
Sure,
money, but not everyone that makes good money in the oil field looks like they do, because they
totally.
like a little bit of that. Just kind of that where people aren't necessarily making that kind of judgment about them or getting that kind of attention.
Absolutely. Well, what are you? I mean, ultimately, a lot of these good business owners are good salespeople, whether they realize it or not. And what are you trying to do? If you own a welding shop, let's say, and you're going to be at the office every day, are your hands really going to feel like, let's go fight for that guy in a $3,000 suit and a $50,000? Maybe,
Right.
maybe. But
Yeah.
if they look at you and they see somebody that's a good leader and kind of looks like they do, then I think that motivates them even more. I mean, you got to have some connection with your employees, I think,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
you want to be a leader, and so and this is interesting too. But I used to get actually asked all the time because I was a yard guy, okay, out at the yard in West Texas when I started, and I would always dress like the owner, always, and the other guy I worked with kind of dressed like a yard hand. And he would always give me so much shit about why you wearing them polos and them khaki shorts for and all that. What are you doing that for? And I just told him, like, look, back to I want to be in his chair in 5 years.
Sure.
Okay, so I'm looking at where I want to go.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Dress
so
the
that's
part.
fine. And listen, not everybody wants to be the owner. And there's days I wish I wasn't.
Yeah.
Okay, I love to trade it off every once in a while. But if that's something you want to do, then he was a mentor to me, and so he wasn't a $3,000 suit, but he wasn't in a pair of raggedy old jeans either.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
you're meeting with bankers and things like that, and so you've got to kind of have a good middle area, I guess.
Yeah, and you're dressing the part and you're kind of mimicking what he's doing, and really it's, I mean, and that's a reasonable thing to be wearing also, when
Sure.
because you look at the blue collar lifestyle, the white collar lifestyle, the auction, especially in oil and gas, that can be kind of a hybrid.
Totally.
So
Yeah,
that
yeah, because you're dealing with the biggest banks in the world, okay, and then you're dealing with the guys like we're talking about.
And then going to get the equipment, if you go look at it, it's not necessarily just like bright and shiny waiting for you. It could be on location, not in really good shape, and behind some weeds, and not necessarily you going out there in a suit would be appropriate to be going to
Totally.
look at oil field equipment.
Totally. Yeah, and I actually, I mean, there is something to it because if I'm going to buy a piece of equipment, I'm going to definitely dress a certain way, and it won't be like this.
Right.
I mean, I just went and picked that pipe handler up yesterday. If I'd have dressed like this, the guy probably wouldn't have negotiated like he did.
Yeah, because you
Based
really.
on, I had mud all over myself and my jeans on and my t-shirt, from like 2015 crawfish broil or something like that, and
Yeah.
so yeah, there is something to it though. I didn't know we were going to get off on that, but it's kind of interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. And like just really like knowing that, looking like you know what you're talking about too.
Absolutely.
And like I feel like it would be more relatable to people.
Totally. I think so. And like you said, it kind of depends on who you're talking to and what you're trying to achieve,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, and that's just reading the room, that's knowing your audience, it's knowing your customer, it's knowing the business relationship,
Hmm.
because, it's like for me, it's like my whole, vibe with my show. Well, I worked in the field and I wore boots and jeans in the
Sure.
field. And even working in sales and marketing in oil and gas, it's like I'm still mostly in boots and jeans, like, so it wouldn't make sense for me to be dressed like I was going out, on the weekend or something. It's
Absolutely.
like it
Right.
just, and then also like the people that I interview. It's like some people will be in here wearing their sports coats. Other guys, especially, that come in that are, they work in the field, they might wear their brand, guys that
Sure.
have like their own like clothing brand and things like that, or,
That's cool.
that
Very cool.
feel more comfortable. And I always tell everyone, like, you need to be yourself. I had one guy come on my show and he was pretty blue collar, and he told me beforehand, he was like, I tried to put on a sports coat, but I had to take it off because I just didn't feel right.
Well, yeah, but that didn't translate his authenticity through the
Exactly.
camera.
Like, you have
And
to be yourself.
totally.
I have to be myself. And so I feel comfortable in boots and jeans when I'm
Sure.
talking about oil and gas, because and I drive a truck, and so it's like you want to also embody it. You're not
Yeah.
you're not trying to be something that you're not.
Totally.
I've tried to wear a blazer for
Well, I
my
did
show.
dress up today. I mean, this is the power of the
Yeah,
Permian.
I
Okay,
like it
this is
though.
kind of a big deal.
No, it's
So
huge and it looks perfect, and I think that it's very you. Yeah, you
I
definitely
thank you.
look like yourself, but I think that, owning a business, being the auctioneer, and then, being in an industry like oil and gas, like there's a lot of different personality
Totally.
traits that go into
And I always
that.
thought it was weird. This is crazy, this topic, but I always thought it was so interesting because when I worked at Cruise, I won't call him out by name because he'll know, but he would show up like at Calfrec or some big Key or some large company and a sports jacket and all this, and I'm like, what the hell is he wearing that for? This isn't. That's
Hmm.
not the setting. And all the hands were like,
Yeah.
banker here? Is the
Hmm.
banker here?
Right.
But that's just what that was
Raises
his
eyebrows.
persona. So
Oh, for
that's
sure.
that's what he was always in.
You could tell when people are visiting from offices on location, or if
For
the
sure.
investor is in town. Like, they stick out like a sore
Sore
thumb.
thumb.
They're extremely clean, a lot of times in slacks.
Extremely clean.
It's like, I'm like, you're not here to work. You're
Well, and
not.
so many of them are looking around like, what's that?
Yeah,
What's this?
very lost and,
Yeah.
and foreign, because it's like you get out of your element, and I mean, and you don't necessarily adjust, like being in steel-toed boots, or even just a pair of boots.
Yeah.
You're not in your loafers or your, you know, slacks and whatnot that you wear in the office in Houston or wherever you came from. And so, like people in the field, they're wearing FRs and hard hats.
Totally.
So it's very easy to just kind of get in a completely different realm if you're in a sports coat on location.
Absolutely.
It's like,
I'm usually in a pair of slacks and some dunk lows. And a lot of times I feel like I get this kind of like, oh, who's this city slicker? But
yeah.
what's interesting, one thing that I do is I'll usually pick out a few pieces of equipment and let them know I know exactly what it is, what it's worth, and then you'll see the behavior change like that. Like,
Yeah.
okay, this
The
guy, he
knowledge.
knows what he's looking at. It's an XK90 power swivel. It'll be worth 150,000. How many hours it got on? I mean, then they're like,
Yeah,
okay,
you're
this
asking the
this
right
this guy
questions.
understands what he's looking at.
Absolutely. So is that your process? Like, I mean, because with being in Fort Worth and is a lot of the equipment in West Texas, or you buy from all over? Do you always go look at it?
I never go look at it.
Okay.
I typically have a set amount I'm willing to pay. Okay, and if it goes above that, I don't care. I'm not one of these that has emotional attachment. I mean, the auctioneer can be up down tomorrow and doing that to me, and it's
Sure.
what I don't care. And I buy all over. We just bought some cement block trailers out of New York. We got some power swivels out of Wyoming, North Dakota. You got to figure all that in, though. I mean, that's something you learn quick. The transportation is not cheap,
Right.
and it can be expensive, and especially when you're moving old equipment
Mm-hmm.
that's been sitting forever. The stuff we just bought last week, we immediately send a tire guy out. He changes all the tires. I don't care if they look good, change them all.
Yeah.
Because I've blown way too many tires
Yeah.
out. And then you spend triple the money on the side of the highway getting somebody to change the tire than if you'd have just had somebody to go over there to start.
Well, knowing it's just sitting there in the sun getting the dry rot, like it's not so much that, well, it hasn't been used. It's just all that sitting.
Totally.
It's like that you just better.
Right. And the hoses are the same way. They dry rot. You know what I mean? It's just stuff you pick up on. But no, we consign from all over the country. I mean, well, really all over the world. It doesn't matter where it's at. If somebody wants to sell a piece of oil and gas equipment, 817-403-0342. Okay. A little plug there, but we can sell it for you.
Yeah. Well, and does it all come back to your yard, or do you sometimes is it picked up from where it is
Well,
after it's
this is
sold?
definitely an advantage to doing this since I was 17. No, a lot of the equipment will be sold on either the owner's location or like right now I think we're leasing 6 yards across the country, and it's just that's where I said that it's nice starting out so young. I've got all these connections. I just call these guys, hey, you know where a yard's at? Yeah, I got my buddy Gerald's got a yard down the road, and he'll take 1750 a month. Okay, perfect. So we do a lot of that. So if we've got 3 or 4 consigners in one area, we've got a yard in Vernal, Utah, we've got a yard in Williston right now that we've been leasing for months, and we just bring it all in there. And then I've got connections that will go out, and we've got day rates with all these guys, and they go take all the inventories, all the photos for us, and do a really good job.
Oh, nice.
Mhm.
Well, and that's also really efficient because I mean, there's no way you could really go and look at everything and be able to do that. But just you and you also being the auctioneer, not just the owner, being able to keep everything straight and make sure that you're, constantly staying uh, in conversation with your buyers and
Totally.
sellers and just being prepared for the auction.
What that probably helps us do the most, I would say, because when I started, we would just fly everywhere or drive, and they'd send me to go write up all the equipment, take all the photos, and where it really helps having these. Contractors, I guess would be a good way to put it, but that help us, and we've got them in each region, the same people we use every time. If somebody wants to put in something late, or if I would have flown up there and cataloged it, inventoried it, well, now I got 10 more pieces, or my buddy wants to put something in.
Oh,
Well,
yeah.
now I'm going back up there. That
Yeah.
takes time,
A
wait for the
lot of
business.
energy.
So it works out really nice because
Mm-hmm.
they can just jump right over there. Most of them live in the towns where our yards are at or within 10 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
So, and we get them to let the equipment in, receive it, and then also check it out, and we pay per item on receiving and checkout, and then we pay a flat fee on the inventory and photos. But it's much more efficient, much more
Yeah.
efficient.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I love that. So, I mean, you guys have your system and everything's in place. It's a monthly auction, and it's in Fort Worth. You have the big LED screen and just
Beautiful,
really, really nice setup.
love it.
And what are you really looking forward to in the future, the growth of Showtime?
I think it's going to be exponential. I mean, if you look at the results, they're just they impress me for sure. And now we're selling the yellow iron with some of the biggest companies in the world, and we can get even more. The problem with the largest company in the world, and we all know who we're talking about here, but you just get so big that it's hard to keep that personability with your client.
Yeah.
Okay. When you've got 8,000 clients worldwide, everybody's kind of got to get the same thing.
Yeah.
You can't have a whole lot of the negotiable terms. We negotiate terms with nearly every contract, because everybody's different. It's
Mhm.
not a one size fits all.
Right.
And I think Showtime's gonna blow up. We're looking at a yard in Dubai right now. We're selling so much equipment to the Middle East. It would really help us if we have an active yard there at the port of Jebel Ali. So we're looking into that.
So
So some
exciting.
really big things, yeah.
Yeah.
And we're talking about doing some classic car business or classic car auctions. Kind of going back to where I started.
How
I love
fun.
it. I mean,
Yeah.
they're so much fun.
Mhm.
A lot of people still attend those sales,
Mhm.
and they're just exciting. And
Yeah.
and so we're looking to add that on. I think Labor Day we're going to have our first classic car auction.
Okay, so that's something to look forward to.
Absolutely.
And, for my followers in the audience in the oil and gas space, like what kind of equipment, especially right now, because it's always, the transitions and the industry cyclical, like what types of equipment are, hot ticket items or what you're looking for or
On a broad statement, I would say well service is pretty hot. If you want to be specific, Service King 575 rigs are like lightning rods right now. A lot of people like them. They have good service. They have a good parts department. So, Service Kings are hot. Pipe handlers are hot, like we just picked up yesterday. Any of that ancillary equipment. The only thing that's a little tougher right now, in my opinion, is drilling. Drilling rigs are a little tougher, especially if they're not late model, new specs, all that. If you're looking at a 1,000 horsepower drilling rig, Brewster N45 or something that's, from 1980, that's a tough sell right now. That's a tough sell. I mean, you're looking at maybe South America, and that's about the only place you're going to be able to move it.
okay.
So drillings, you can still bring good money, and again, late model equipment is doing pretty well, but the older stuff's a tough move right now, and so much of that has changed with technology too. Those big swivels, drilling swivels. I mean, they won't bring what they weigh. Just because technology has gone past them. A lot of the now you see all the sand being moved in those boxes, and it seems like these Sand Kings that we used to sell for $50,000 a piece, now they bring $4,500, 5 grand.
They're obsolete.
The technology just kind of went past them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. What kind of equipment holds its value? Like the tried and true that.
You know, you always stick to the good brands. I think, Gardner Denver. Gardner, I've sold
Mm-hmm.
more Gardner Denver triplex pumps than I could even imagine. And there's some of those from 1980s, that we sell for a premium. So they hold their value well. I would say stick to the larger brands if you want. And in pipe handlers, Forum and Hawker are the biggest. There's a plug to them. They should pay me for that. But they're the biggest, and that's what everybody wants. And there's a lot of knockoffs, and they may be as good, but it's a tougher sell, because people just aren't familiar with them.
Mm-hmm.
And Watson Hopper rigs, I've sold a lot of Watson Hopper rigs. People love them, but it's almost like a cult following. The people that run Watson Hoppers run Watson Hoppers,
Okay.
and the people who don't, and
Got
they're
it.
not interested even if it's cheap.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a very unique market in that sense. I don't know that you could say just one thing holds its value better, but stick to the big brands, I think, is safe.
Gotcha. Well, I really appreciate hearing all of that and loved your stories and
Yeah,
just, hearing and learning about you guys and,
sure.
getting a chance to get to know Showtime. I think that a lot of great things are coming in the future. It's definitely, from my experience in the auction, I do see a lot of the differences in how you do things. And
Hmm.
I think, people that are going to get the chance to participate in your auction are going to have a lot of fun. And
It's showtime, baby.
it's Showtime, baby. Well, thank you, Charles, for coming on today.
Thanks for having me.
It's been a pleasure. And thank you, everyone, for watching Power of the Permian. We'll see you next time.